So the next section, he talks about piety. And this is piety in the workplace. And this is where it gets, we get down to some real business. Not simply avoiding the haram, but now having a level of what you may say godliness or being scrupulous. And that is being very, very particular about things to the point that you are willing to forego some of the permissible in order to drive the distance between you and the impermissible further. The first level is to stay away from everything which the legal edicts have determined to be impermissible. And this is something that should be very clear. Like if it's been ruled that something is haram, then we have to stay away from it. Whether that's by clear-cut divine text, whether in the Quran or the Sunnah, or some religious edict, something that has been derived through religious deductive reasoning, scholarly pursuit. And they said, no, this is impermissible. It's haram. So this is the first level of this piety, is that you stay away from that. So there's no real example that's needed for that category. The second one, or the second level, is that you stay away from every doubtful thing which you're obliged to stay away from. Or I should say that it is preferred to stay away from. You're not obliged to stay away from those doubtful things, but it's preferred that you stay away from them. And he'll talk about the levels of those doubtful issues when it comes to business and work. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Da' ma yuribuk ila ma la yuribuk." Leave what causes you doubt for that which does not cause you doubt. The third level here is that you leave some of the halal out of fear that you may fall into the haram. You're worried that it may lead you to the impermissible, and so you leave it. And I'll give you a very practical example of this. Mindless chit-chat. Is it permissible to talk to one another? Yes. You can call on the phone, you can text, you can meet in person, go out for coffee, go out for tea. You can hang out on the court, in the masjid, at home, and you can chit-chat and talk. But what happens a lot of times, if you're not careful, the conversations that we often have, they can degrade into something which is doubtful or impermissible. Like what? Backbiting, gossiping, slander, lying, boasting, bragging, etc. Those types of things are impermissible. And so basically, the point here, this is level number 3, okay? So level number 1, very basic. Level number 2, now you're starting to lift some heavy weights, you're getting your strength. Level number 3 is now you're, a gold medalist, if you will, because now you're beginning to sacrifice some of what's been made permissible. So for example, those social gatherings, you're very particular about them. You say, look, I know this social circle of mine that whenever I go there, the conversations are always sketchy, borderline haram. Sometimes they dip right into it, head first, and we're swimming around. We're talking about people, we're, gossiping, we're backbiting people, all that type of a thing. So you know what, from now on, I'm going to keep this group kind of a distance from me. And I'm going to limit my interaction with that. So the social circles, the opportunity to fall into sin becomes less and less and less until eventually you're able to wean yourself from that. And then you find other alternatives for your social engagement. So you end up, leaving that which is halal in and of itself because you're afraid that you're going to fall into the haram. The next level, number 4, and this is the highest, as he says, being scrupulous in regards to everything besides Allah. Meaning you are, staying very, very diligent with everything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the piety of as-siddiqeen, the truthful, righteous believers. And he gives an example. And this, even when I read it some time ago, it took me a minute to understand what was happening. because it seems so out of this world. This example was of Imam Yahya ibn Yahya al-Naysaburi. He was one of the greats of his time, Imam of Hadith, of piety, and he was a trustworthy scholar. He was from the leaders of his time when it came to knowledge. He was one of the leading scholars. And also, not just a leading scholar, but he was a very religious person. There's a difference, right? To have knowledge and then to actually implement that knowledge. We know how that is. Some of us, we have a level of knowledge, and the real beneficial knowledge is that which is acted upon, and that makes a person it distinguishes a very scholastic, academically advanced person from someone that their academic knowledge is much less, but their piety is much more. Right? That's more valuable. As mentioned by Ibn Qudam in the very beginning, that knowledge, it's a means to an end. It's a means to be able to worship Allah. Okay? It's not just by virtue in and of itself. And so this Imam, they said he took medicine. And there was a woman that said to him, you should walk around your house a little bit to give time for the medicine to work. Make sense? You know, sometimes you hear those types of things, like, take the medicine and eat, or drink, or do something. And he said, this type of walking, I don't know anything about it. I have been, he says, أُحَاسِبُ نَفْسِي مُنْذُ 30 سَنَةً. I have been self-examining myself for 30 years. Meaning, I have been scrupulous. I have been acting in a very pious manner. I've been very particular about what I do, what I say, how I act, all the way down to how the steps that I take for 30 years. Meaning basically that the guy, he didn't find an intention in getting up after taking the medicine to walk around so that it would work to be something of a religious nature. It was not anything related to the deen. And so he didn't do it. He didn't do it. Back in the day, they had a different view of medicine than we have today. Today, our view of medicine is revered. Our view of medicine and pharmacy, of health, the way that you can tell what we value by how much we pay for it, how much we're willing to pay for it. The hospital bills, the insurances, the amount of times that and the reliance that we have on medication. It's almost not even a second thought that if I have a headache, that maybe I should recite al-Fatiha. Somebody today might think you're a loony for that idea. But those pious people, it wasn't that medicine was unavailable. No, medicine was available. They had their own medicines, that they would take and that were very well known. But it was a sign of trust in Allah that a person didn't take medicine. It's permissible to take it, but it's not an obligation. The scholars of the Islamic law, they say that to medicate is permissible, but it's not an obligation. And if you leave off medicating, it was a sign of trust for many people, trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over the medicine. Because what ends up happening is that sometimes a person will take the medicine believing that the medicine is what has cured them and not Allah. And we know that these things are means. Some people take the medicine, they don't get cured. Some people, they take it, they do. Some people don't take it, they are cured. And so here, he took the medicine, obviously. As it says, he took the medicine. And because there's nothing wrong with taking medicine. Don't think I'm telling you, don't go home and medicate. Look, when I get a headache, I take a Panadol, But I do say Bismillah first. So do say Bismillah, right? Get a little bit of something in there for yourself. But, it was like how far he was willing to go with that. Like, I'll take the medicine, but all this extra walking around and this extra stuff, it doesn't seem like a religious act to me. That's not something that was prescribed. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ, for every sickness there's a cure or a medicine. There's a cure for it. So I took what seems to be the cure. He didn't say get up and jumping jacks and exercise and walk around and etc. No. So he didn't do it, and that was how some of the very, very pious, obviously the cream of the crop, they would behave in doing such a thing. Here, the Imam draws our attention to kind of the actualization of this, or the realization of this piety, this level of piety. He says there's kind of a starter level, and then there's a pro level, right? There's a beginning and there's an end, and between that there are other levels, just like the halal and the haram. This level of piety has its various different levels, and of course this piety it's what it's really about is being precautious, And he says the more the person is precautious, the more extreme, if you will, they are in precaution, the faster they will cross over a sirat, which we know is the bridge over the hellfire. The lighter their back will be from the burden of sin. And this is how the people of paradise will be distinguished in ranks in the paradise. We understand that there's various ranks of paradise, and there's various levels. And that the hellfire also has various levels. The paradise ascends, and the levels of the hellfire descend. And so the person that exercises this type of piety, this precaution, that's how they're distinguished in those levels. If you ever wondered, well, how do you get to be on the first level of paradise versus the second versus the third? Well, this is it right here, is that you exercise this type of precaution in your daily dealings. While you're at home or you're away at work, while you're at the job. And this is how you will be distinguished in those various levels according to the levels of your piety. And the same thing goes for the haram. The haram has these various levels. Did you ever think well, how does a person in the highest level of hellfire versus the lowest? I mean, there's a couple of clear things, like the hypocrites are on this lowest level. But what about people that, are in hellfire? Where are they going to be, and how are they going to be there? Well, there you go. It's because it's the lack of precaution. And it's the heedlessness, the level of heedlessness when it comes to the impermissible. As people are different, that's how their levels will be determined. So he says, if you want, then increase that precaution. Go above and beyond. Take more precaution, because essentially you're only taking precaution for your own soul. And if you want at the same time, take all the concessions. But it's your soul that you're conceding. Right? If you're constantly being precautious, then while you're doing it, remember, I'm taking care of my soul. I'm taking care of my hereafter. But if you're looking for all the concessions, how to work your way, the workarounds for everything, to make it work for you, and I'm feeling and I need to find the, I need to find the fatwa, and I need to find the way to make myself feel happy, then you're conceding your own self, your own soul.